Hey everybody, welcome to today's critical reasoning video. You can see the argument behind me. We'll get started with reading and understanding the conclusion, the line of reasoning in the argument. We'll then look at the question stem, understand what the question type is and what our strategy should be for approaching this question type. Finally, we'll jump into the process of elimination and we'll figure out which of the answer options are the best fit given the question type, given the strategy. Alright, let's get started with reading the argument. It seems that medical care is constantly improving, so this is increasing and is far better today than it was a few years ago. New medicines are being developed and at a lower cost, so this is telling me why medical care is improving. Technological advancements are being made and new treatments are devised. However, so all of this is explaining why medical care has been improving over the last few years. However, so that's a contradiction. You could have expected that there would be a contradiction in the paragraph because of the word seems that. Seems that means this is what it looks like. This is how we are perceiving it. This is what it looks like usually implies that that's not the reality, that's just our perception. So quite often when you see constructions such as seems that, there will be some sort of a contradiction. However, not everybody agrees. However, researchers have found that medical care is not actually improving. It's just a perception or anything of that sort. You can apply this logic in reading comprehension and NCR as well. I'm not saying this happens 100% of the time, but it does happen most of the time. However, hospital care has not improved as much as expected. Now, we're not talking about medical care per se. Here we talked about anything to do with medicine, so could be pharma related and so on, versus here we're talking specifically about treatment in a hospital. Hospital care has not improved as much as expected. Most hospitals do not have a large enough ER, so that's now explaining why hospital care has not improved. Just like we explained why medical care has improved, now the author is explaining why hospital care has not improved. So hospitals do not have a large enough ER that can handle a sudden influx of patients, and the number of people who die in a hospital due to reasons other than what they got admitted for is staggeringly high. That means really high. So here to here we are explaining why hospital care has not improved. So the point of the paragraph seems to be to establish that hospital care has not improved as much as expected, even though medical care has improved. So this will be the author's conclusion, that hospital care has not improved. And these reasons given in the tail end of the paragraph are the author's premises justifying the conclusion and explaining why hospital care has not improved. Let's look at our question. All of the following underscore. Underscore means support. Who are we supposed to support? Are we supposed to support the belief that medical care has improved or the author's argument that hospital care has not improved? Whenever you have multiple sides in the argument, always read your question stem completely and carefully. All of the following underscore the author's argument. So now we have to say hospital care has not improved. That is what we are trying to support. Now it says except. That means that 4 of the answer options will support and 1 of the option will not. Doesn't have to mean that the one option that does not support will weaken the argument or counter the author's conclusion. It could counter, that is one of the possibilities, but it could also be simply irrelevant. It could be repeating information that is there in the paragraph. It could be twisting around some logic. It could be talking about something unrelated, as in it could talk about medical care instead of talking about hospital care. So there are several different possibilities here. Before we look into the answer options, let's think about the author's argument and what we are looking for in 4 of the answer options. So the author's conclusion is that hospital care has not seen much improvement, even though medical care has. This is the point that the author is trying to make. And there are a set of reasons given to arrive at this conclusion, which are the premises in the argument. And the premises are, there are 2 of them. The ER is pretty small in most of the hospitals. It's not large enough to handle the influx of patients. And second, people are dying at a staggeringly high rate, especially for other reasons other than what they got admitted into the hospital for. Now, these two are reasons that have already been given in the argument to support the conclusion that hospital care has not improved. It's a cause-effect relationship. These are the causes. This is the effect that we are observing. Because of these two reasons, we are concluding hospital care has not improved. To further validate the argument, we can't keep talking about just the same reasons that have been given in the argument. If we gave the same reasons, then we are not adding further credibility to the conclusion. When you take the correct answer, if it was a normal strengthened question, when you take the correct answer and you add it into the argument, the believability of the conclusion has to go up. Here, when we take 4 answer options and each of them in turn we add into the argument, not together, each of them one at a time, each one positively impacts the conclusion and the credibility of the conclusion has to go up. Then that particular option is strengthening it, and so we will eliminate it because we're doing an except question. So what we want for 4 options to do is to give one more reason other than the reasons that have already been given in your premises. Let's do the process of elimination and look at our answer options. Most hospitals require doctors to do so much paperwork that they spend insufficient time on direct patient care. It is not that they are spending less of their hours or less frequently on direct patient care. It is insufficient time on direct patient care, and that means that you're not being efficient. You don't have enough time to take care of the patients, and that will imply that hospital care is suffering. And if you're saying that hospital care is suffering, then this answer option is saying the same thing as the author, and so it clearly supports the author. If it is supporting the author, then it's not the correct answer because we're doing an except question, so let's eliminate it. A is not your answer. B, most hospitals recirculate air, and therefore it is very easy for diseases such as anthrax to spread through the hospital. Even COVID, we've seen these examples of situations where people are in rooms where the air is recirculated, and then you're more likely to get COVID, right? So if the hospitals are recirculating air, then that could be the reason that hospital care is not so good, and people are dying in hospitals for diseases other than what they came into the hospital for. So it also establishes that hospital care is no good. It gives me one more reason. It is the air circulation in the hospitals that is now the problem. In A, the problem was the time that the doctors are spending on patient care. Here the reason is the circulation of the air. Either way, each option is giving me one more factor. So again, that means that this answer option is supporting the conclusion, and if it's supporting the conclusion, then we can eliminate it because we don't want the right answer to support the conclusion. In smaller cities, the ambulance service is on a voluntary basis, and the response time for calls is much lower than the national average, leading to a high loss of life. So, what does this have to do with hospital care? All that this answer option talks about is ambulance service. Where are we talking about hospital care? When we say higher loss of life, we don't necessarily have to mean loss of life once people get to the hospital. It took so much time in the ambulance that at the hospital they're dying or anything of that sort. That is not clear in the answer option. It doesn't tie the death rate to the hospital. At least then it would have been relevant to our discussion, given that the paragraph was also talking about how people are dying in a hospital at staggeringly high rates. And even then it wouldn't be for reasons other than what they got admitted for, because these people are not even getting admitted, right? So my point here is this talks about ambulance service without tying it to hospital care. So this is an answer option that is irrelevant to the discussion. Now if it's irrelevant to the discussion, I'm going to keep it because that means it is not supporting the author's argument. Let's check D and E. For now we're holding on to C. A number of doctors in private hospitals are not held accountable by the administration for the loss of patients. Now, if the doctors are not being held accountable for the loss of patients, could be a reason that they may be trying riskier treatments, they're trying to come up with new and novel ways of working with patients because there's no backlash that they will face even if their treatment methodology fails. or something like that, right? It could just be that they are being lazy because they are not being held accountable. So not being held accountable is kind of like an indirect reason that suggests inefficiency on the side of the doctors. This is only talking about private hospitals. If you notice, D is not as explicit as A and B in directly tying with hospital care. B, for example, said the air is bad, anthrax spreads. So it's more direct in what it is trying to convey, whereas D is more of like a subtle implication, maybe because the doctors are not held accountable, maybe they're not doing their job as well, maybe what's happening in private hospitals is kind of representative of what's happening around the nation. So there is a little bit of vagueness in D. There's an indirect implication, but at least it talks about hospitals. At least it gives a potential reason for the loss of patients, versus C had no tie to hospital care at all. So between C and D, I'm still eliminating D, holding on to C, and let's look at E as well. Doctors in most private hospitals, again this talks about private hospitals, have performance appraisals based on how much money they have brought in for the hospital rather than based on how effectively they treated patients. This is again a very similar answer option to D. Again, it suggests that the way the administration at a hospital works with these doctors could potentially be contributing to inefficiency on the side of the doctors. Maybe they care more about how much money they bring in than about how efficiently they're treating patients. D and E are very similar lines. A and B are along very similar lines. A and B are very direct about why hospital care is not efficient. D and E suggests a potential reason that doctors at hospitals are not very good and therefore hospital care is not very efficient, versus C is completely irrelevant and talks about ambulance service. Therefore, in our final analysis, C has to be the correct answer.